Have you been told you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or too much? Do you have big feelings and deep thoughts you don't always know what to do with? I'm Linn, a certified life coach and highly sensitive person. I've helped dozens of highly sensitive clients feel more energized, more confident, and more in control of their high sensitivity. In these episodes, you'll get the information and inspiration to level up your life as a highly sensitive person too. Welcome to the Highly Sensitive Club. Hello, highly sensitive person, and welcome to this week's episode of the Highly Sensitive Club. I am so stoked about this one because on today's episode, I have my business bestie and my dear, dear friend, Pierre Bradette on.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm so thrilled and excited to be here. We've been talking about this for a while and the universe made it happen. We've been friends for a few years through our coach training, and we've been following similar paths on this. And I'm just excited to be part of this and to speak to your listeners.
I am so thrilled too. We did go through Thriving Coach Academy together. We were both in the cohort of fall 2022. Since then, tell us what you're doing with your coaching business.
I work with corporate professionals who are feeling the constraints of creativity or feeling the boredom of the routine of being in corporate life and helping them make the leap into entrepreneurship and into solopreneurship. I'm sure you have a lot of clients and friends who are corporate professionals and who are living that life and are probably experiencing a lot of the shifts that are happening right now. DEI has gone away and there's a lot of disruption happening in a lot of industries. I was in corporate for almost 30 years. It's hard to say that, but it was a means to an end. And in the last decade, I had been finding myself bored, pushing against the day-to-day culture and grinding it through, and was really frustrated with the lack of creativity and the lack of being able to do a lot of things. What I tried to do for myself is just make a leap from being a corporate professional and starting my own thing. I'm in Seattle and there's a huge startup community. I wanted to do my own thing because I didn't want to recreate the wheel that I just left. It was really deliberate.
I am so glad you're doing that because I know there are a lot of highly sensitive people who try out the corporate track and they do the typical 8 to 4, 9 to 5 route. Then they find that it doesn't give them the kind of creativity or flexibility and the independence that highly sensitive people really crave. So when did you discover that you are a highly sensitive person?
What came to mind immediately is that I did management consulting for the last 17 years of my corporate career. And one of my what we called engagements or assignments, I was working in the Seattle Police Department with the chief of police. We were reorganizing how they did things in the administrative office that supported her directly on a day-to-day basis. And one of her admins just happened to mention in a casual conversation that she was an HSP. And I'm like, what is that? It's interesting. And I think I might be that as well. But I was at that point in my career where I was just pushing, not really accepting the fact or even knowing fully what HSP is. And it always stuck in my head. And at the same time, I was in therapy, I was coping and not necessarily thriving. It came back full force when we met in our coaching program. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I had seen this years ago. And given the circumstances at the time, I wasn't open to it.
That is a really common experience, my friend. So many people that I talk to or first-time listeners on this show have no idea that they're highly sensitive until someone says, hey, there's this thing. It's called high sensitivity. Almost everyone I talk to that I say, you might be a highly sensitive person, they have the exact same response that you do. What's that? Oh, wait, that might be me.
Yeah. And what's really interesting, and we've talked about this, in the culture that we live in, you get labeled so negatively, especially being male, even more so. And you make an effort to get away from that label. So in a way, I knew I was highly sensitive, but I didn't have the terminology or the tools to build awareness around it. I was the kid who reacted a lot when I was younger, and I kind of closed off that part of myself. And it makes sense that we don't know what it is or know that there's resources and support around it because the way the culture works right now.
Absolutely. One of my favorite things is to demystify high sensitivity for people that it doesn't mean you're too dramatic or you're too much or there's something wrong with you,
Mhm.
that it's how we negotiate the culture. I also think your experience is very common for a lot of us highly sensitive kids, that you learn to push your emotions down and lock them away somewhere because it feels safer than feeling all the feelings. How does high sensitivity show up in your life now?
I've gone a complete 180. I've learned to embrace it in so many ways, new ways every day. I've come to treat it as a gift and as a tool and as a power source, especially in this journey of entrepreneurship. I embrace it in a way that I didn't even 5 years ago. At the end of the day, I see it as really befriending my nervous system, really befriending how I show up in this world. I use it as a pathway into my experience, and I've gotten a lot more attuned to it and not treat it like I did when I was younger as something bad about me or some defect in me. I throw off the expectations around being stoic and not having feelings or being too sensitive and all that. I've dived into it in a way that it's become a superpower for me. It's enriched my relationships, it's enriched my life, it's enriched the adventure that I keep choosing for myself.
You and I talk about this frequently. I have a lot of knowledge and education about high sensitivity because I've just sought out that information over the years. So, as far as the head part, I'm a little bit ahead of you, but I look up to you so much in the work that you've done on your emotional and energetic self because I think you're ahead of me. When you say you've become an expert at befriending your nervous system, which is such a beautiful phrase, what
Mm-hmm.
does that look like in your day to day or your weekly routine or your monthly routine? How do you befriend your nervous system?
Well, there's something I've learned in the past few years. There's so many tools, there's so many ways to do this. And sometimes they stop becoming effective, but then they become effective again. It really depends on where you're at in your life. My journey to this really started when I started doing yoga almost 15 years ago. It was a reintroduction to my body. I use the word somatic sense, which is basically body awareness, being present in your body and feeling what's happening in your body. Most of us spend most of our time from the neck up, and the yoga practice and having not necessarily goal-oriented physical practices helped me get in touch, because we're not just our brains, we're consciousness in these human bodies, and consciousness is not just from our neck up, it's our entire body. So that's just a long way of saying that I've really gotten in touch with my body, and yoga has been a primary pathway for that, to understand what's happening to me moment to moment, creating that awareness. I found it as a bridge to start making friends with my nervous system, with my body, and just paying attention to, what's going on with you moment to moment in a way that doesn't overwhelm you. As you start these practices, they will overwhelm you because we're not used to it. We don't have the neural pathways to understand what's happening in our body, to pay attention to the signals of the emotions that we're having. You're just overriding and ignoring. I do a lot of other practices as well. Meditation has been one pathway. Going to retreats. There's something magical about doing group exercises or workshops, because you can compare experiences, you can see what other people's experiences are, and that gives you a signal like, oh, is that happening for me? You can learn so much from these group situations.
I think that's a good start to call out the disconnection that a lot of highly sensitive people feel with their body and the emotions and the sensations in their body.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us feel that way. And I have talked a lot about that on the podcast because
Yeah.
that's something that I've recently been learning just in the last few years about how to connect my head to my heart and to my body as well. What you said that really struck me was the non achievement oriented physical movement. It's
Mm-hmm.
not going to the gym. It's not trying to get your steps in. It's not trying to check that box. It's about being in your body and enjoying the experience of being in your body and tapping into what that feels like.
What I was dancing around is the notion of presence. It's about letting go of the goals in order to return to presence. I have this practice, and I use mantras a lot to remind me to get out of my goal-oriented mind, to return to the moment, to savor what's happening right now. I use this a lot with my clients. We forget so much where our body is in space and time from moment to moment because we're so trapped in our heads. A lot of times I'm just feeling my feet. I'm feeling my legs, my lower legs, my upper legs, like what's happening in my stomach, what's happening in my chest. I spend a lot of time coming back to that physical sensation to root me back in time, root me back in the moment, root me back into a physical location. And there's some other quick techniques. One that I really like is take notice of what you're tasting right now. That's a really good one. That brings you back into the moment, brings you back into your body. Notice what the temperature is. Notice what the colors in the rooms are. Look for a particular color in your surroundings. Those are all techniques to bring you back into the present moment. I did want to go back to share a pathway. I'm a gay man. I'm a Gen X, and I grew up in the 80s where being gay was not what it is today. I grew up in a really repressed way. And one of my pathways back into my body is giving myself permission to explore my sexuality in a healthy, connected way. Some of the weird things that I do, I call them weird because this is like they're unusual. It's just
I'm going to call them woo-woo, the woo-woo things that you do, because I do that too.
Fundamentally, our sexuality and our sexual desires and our sexual activities really bring us back into our bodies. As a HSP, wherever I put my attention, I'm fully 100% focused. I mean, I give my whole self to it, and it takes energy away from other things. One of the things that I experienced in the corporate world, I spent all my energy in achieving, and in the evenings and the weekends, I was totally wiped out. It took me the whole weekend to recover, especially if there's some stress or drama happening. I would find that it depleted me in so many ways, including, exploring my sexuality, exploring my sexual drive. So one of my pathways back into my own body is giving myself permission to explore that in healthy ways, particularly around tantric practices and sacred intimacy practices. That's been the past 3 years. I started doing that when we were in a coaching program. It really has been a parallel track to this entrepreneurial journey. Becoming friends again with pleasure, not only just food or typical things. It's like accessing pleasure in a way from those physical practices, not just like becoming a Buddhist monk or anything, but really embracing presence in that way and connecting with people and connecting in a lot of different ways that I didn't used to do prior to taking this journey.
It's one of the things that I admire most about you, that you're willing to explore and incorporate so many different parts of your life, including spirituality, including sexuality, into the way that you live and the way that you are from day to day. Yeah. And so it comes into your entrepreneurship, it comes into the way that you show up as a friend and a family member and a neighbor, and the way that you socialize and the way that you learn new things. I love the integration of all of those things together. And I also imagine, because you help people in corporate environments to make the leap into entrepreneurship too, that having the freedom to explore some of these things is one of the many benefits of making the leap.
Absolutely. I was texting a friend earlier. My life is weird and wild in so many ways, and I absolutely love it. I absolutely love it. The 9 to 5 routine of corporate life creates really strong barriers, sometimes of 12-hour days, and it absorbs so much of your energy. I decided 3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, you know what, my energy is mine, and I want to be able to have the creativity and the flexibility, like you said earlier, to create the life that I want. Stepping into the unknown, stepping into the uncertainty of entrepreneurship. Yeah, there's risks there, but I can figure them out because I've been in corporate for 30 years, and that's not an easy path either. I've learned enough. I can figure it out. I can make the leap and not only create something that benefits me financially, but allows me to pull in and integrate all these different aspects that have been dormant, particularly the HSP side of things, and show up as my full self in all of these ways. It's been an amazing experience, and it's been an amazing ride. When I was first making this leap, I had no idea what I was jumping into, but my life has opened up in so many ways, and a lot of that has been embracing my highly sensitive nature.
That's why I love these podcast interviews, because sometimes you don't know where they're going to go. I knew that we were going to talk about high sensitivity in a corporate environment because I don't have any experience with that. I've been a gig worker and then self-employed my whole life as an adult. So your experience is so valuable to me. But I really hadn't considered all of the extra areas of your life that can really grow and flourish, whether you choose to stay a traditional employment situation, or whether you choose to become an entrepreneur like we are, you can build something that encourages your high sensitivity to grow and to thrive and to flourish. There are so many different aspects of it that I hadn't considered were available if you break out of that mold.
Everyone has different experiences. We all have different levels of privilege as we enter into the corporate system. You can have very different experiences. You can be supported in some ways that your peers may not be. And I want to acknowledge that. I think that's really important to state. I'm a white, cis male, I'm gay, but I passed for straight for the longest time. And that confers a lot of privilege and gives you access to resources that you may not necessarily have. I think it's important to say because for those who really lean into those identities, that intersection of identities, they can have a very different experience. I chose not to lean in that too much. I came to the point where it's just like I felt like I had outgrown corporate, that I had gotten everything I needed out of it and made the choice to strike out on my own. Of course, I didn't just suddenly decide one day to quit. It was a windy road to create a runway in order to make that leap. But the highly sensitive characteristics helped me to lay that foundation, figure out what I needed in order to set myself up for making the leap over time.
I really want to set up a before and after for this experience, particularly for you as a highly sensitive gay man in a corporate environment. What was it like being in the corporate world with high sensitivity?
I really like this question. It becomes so normal, the way that I was showing up. I was the chief of staff for my consulting company for the Seattle market for 4 years. I was running the leader team. I was the one making sure you have to show up here, you have to do this, we have to get this done. And so it was a really high pressure job. And there's this concept of covering where you hide your true self. I felt like I was hiding my sexuality and I was hiding my sensitivity. The way that showed up is I was known as the most calm person in the room. I was always professional. I got things done. I was very efficient and productive. And people with different level of privileges were able to react. And at certain times, I'm like, holy cow, you're allowed to have that reaction and you're allowed to be this emotional. I'm not, or certain people are not. So I showed up in a not quite robotic way, but in a programmed way. And honestly, doing that for years and numbing yourself years after years, I really lost touch of myself. And that contributed to my need to reconnect to myself. Showing up with that kind of armor and a layer of presentation in corporate life, it was necessary. It was a survival thing. But again, I paid the price for it. I would put so much energy in armoring so that I was practical and productive and all that. But boy, the cost of that in the evenings and in the weekends, some weekends I wouldn't recover until Monday morning. I would lose entire weekends because I was processing what was going on. You know what I'm talking about.
I do. I'm nodding vigorously because the experience you're describing is how most highly sensitive people survive at least one period of their life. For many of us, it's school. School is structured very much like a corporate environment. You show up at 7:30 or 8 o'clock in the morning. You leave at 3 o'clock or 3:30 in the afternoon. You have a short lunch break in between. And in the meantime, you're supposed to be extremely focused, follow all the rules, be a high achiever, also make friends, also follow all of the social structures, as well as the school structures and the academic structures and the achievement and all the expectations that go along with that. So a lot of us do exactly what you're talking about, where we pass or we cover and we create these personas of ourselves that help us survive in the moment. They're good coping mechanisms. They're good survival skills in the moment. And then when we have new opportunities where we become adults or we get a new job or we move to a different city and we're around different people, our context changes and we can suddenly open up and start to see all these other parts of ourselves that we'd never seen before.
I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area. I grew up in Maryland, and that's a very socially conservative, all about appearances kind of culture. I moved here with my then partner in my 30s, and it was exactly what you said. Seattle wasn't quite like that about 25 years. It's shifted to that these days, but it wasn't quite like that when I arrived. The openness, the entrepreneurial spirit was there, and the openness, it was weird. Not as weird as it used to be. Portland is more weird. I love Portland. I love going to Portland because you get your weird on. I was able to open up and breathe, and you don't have to be so cookie cutter. I mean, the joke for DC is Jackie's in a blue shirt. Here in Seattle, when I got here, there was so much more variety of how you show up in your life, how you express. And I just felt at home instantly. Like you said, just moving into a new environment can open you up as an HSP. You can suddenly breathe. You can suddenly feel safe in being different and pursuing all the different things that inspire you or you're interested in. So
that just sparked something for me, and I'm curious to see if you had a similar experience. I remember very distinctly from a young age, like 8, 9, 10, that I could not wait to be an adult. It wasn't just that I wanted to be a grown-up so that I could make decisions, but it was this sense that I would have more control over my life, and that I could build a life in an environment that really felt good to me. For so long, when I was a kid, I felt like I needed to fit in a specific box and I needed to do things a certain way. I only had the few options that were available to me. And there was something about the allure of adulthood that made me feel like I'm going to have all these options and I can build whatever I want. And it became true. So I'm wondering if you had a similar experience as a kid, waiting to grow up and be independent and move on.
I left my house to go to college when I was 17. I was like, I'm getting out of Dodge. I was one of 5 kids, and being highly sensitive among a lot of extroverts, I was the first kid in my family to go to college and graduate college. I have that deep independent spirit, which I think a lot of HSPs have as well. I wanted to create a life that was very different than what I was being fed or was being acclimated to or normalized. And I'm like, no, that's not for me. So I had that urge from a very, very young age. To my parents' dismay, what's really amazing is that I did create a life. The first version of my life, I created the way that I wanted. It was really remarkable what I created for myself. Early success in corporate life, but then it just became dissatisfying. I outgrew it and became more of a cage than freedom. And when I was contemplating jumping into entrepreneurship, I was remembering back to that time when I was like, I'm going to go to college. I'm going to be the first one to go to college, graduate. It took me 5 years, but I did it. And I felt that energy of like, I'm going to create my life again. I'm going to do this again. That 17, 18-year-old in me, I really tapped into that. We talk about parts work and IFS all the time, but that 18-year-old really came back to help me remember I can create the life that I want. I feel like it was my third act, really, because I was in DC in my professional career for 10 years, moved to Seattle, and it was about 15 years before I'm like, okay, now's the time for a change. I'm going to recreate my life here. And like I said, I felt that energy because I moved to Seattle without a job. In 2001, after 9/11, after the dot-com meltdown, a really devastating period. And I literally started from scratch with my partner. So tapping into those energies to create something new for myself.
I wanted to acknowledge, too, that you said your upbringing and your family, they were fine. They were okay. And I feel the same about mine. I feel like I had a pretty good childhood. Everybody gets the societal, cultural messages that things are supposed to look a certain way when that's the only option that you see. And the people around you think that's the way that it's supposed to be too. You have this yearning inside you that there's something else out there and that there's more for you. You just don't know what it looks like yet. That spirit of independence, as you said, can really pull you into some really cool times of your life where you feel unstoppable and you're in this creative mode where you can literally start from scratch. It's terrifying, but It's so freeing and exciting and exhilarating, and you just feel like you're alive.
Totally. I like the word pull because what I found in corporate was like we were always going for goals, like we're shooting for goals. It always felt like we're going uphill. There was this inbuilt sense of having to work really hard, grind through to achieve that goal. This is where I think my highly sensitive has really helped me here, is like tuning into what pulls me. Your energy aligns more to what pulls you versus what you're pushed towards or told what to do. Connecting to what pulls you, it helps you navigate, it helps you work through the uncertainty. You're going to have the uncertainty, you're going to have the instability, you're going to have the unknowns, but the pull through anchors you and you want to work towards it. It's like you're connected to the energy source to really go for it as you navigate the craziness of it all.
I think that's the perfect segue into my next question too, because we talked about what it was like in a corporate environment and fitting yourself into that box to be stereotypically successful, which you were. There's a transition that then happened where you talked about your runway. and how your runway wasn't, I'm working for corporate and suddenly I'm out on my own and I have to figure everything out. The runway was trial and error and experimentation. There was a lot of little steps that went towards the leap into entrepreneurship. And I just talked about this on an episode recently. So I wanted to highlight this. Could you tell us about what that runway looked like?
I was consulting and hired by companies to come in and help them do strategic planning or operations planning. So I have a strong background in figuring out what capabilities you need, what's the path going to be, and what are the resources you're going to need in order to get from point A to point B. There's a lot of unknowns along the way. I say that because when I made the decision, I was just like, okay, I'm going to need to learn a lot of stuff. Some of the basics like marketing and sales. I knew how to do the administrative stuff because that's a strength of mine. What I realized I didn't have was the mindset skills. Making the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship, the identity expansion that happens is huge. It takes time, effort, and focus. In addition to all those practical skills. So when I decided 3 years ago to make this leap, I knew instinctually that I would need to figure those things out. The way I chose to jump into entrepreneurship is I decided to use part of my work nest egg to invest in myself. And so I decided that I was going to build a runway and I was going to work on my marketing skills. I was going to work on my sales skills, in addition to getting my coaching certification. My runway, my plan was to get basic competencies in each of these things. So I sought out the skills. I sought out resources to help me learn those skills. And for me, it was important for me to accelerate my success. I think a lot of people wanted to do it yourself. But as a consultant, I really saw the value in hiring the expertise to help shorten those paths. I believed in it, and we had a lot of success in helping companies transform. I invested in learning the sales skills. I invested in learning the marketing skills. I invested in coaching, and I continue to invest in coaching. I continue investing on all those things in order to help me accelerate, because at 55, I don't have an endless runway. I want to get successful as quickly as possible. I was intentional in figuring out what are the things I'm going to need. I don't have to have it fully planned out. So I was really intentional and deliberate because I had a runway. And I decided what that runway was. I built my capabilities and learned the skills so that when I quit last October, my full-time job, people were asking me, are you afraid? I said, no, I am so excited and thrilled because I've laid the groundwork to make the leap. Now, of course, I haven't figured out every single detail, but I feel much more confident about how to meet people, talk to people, and see what they need and see if I can help them. A lot of the core skills, I had beginnings of them. And now that I'm in it full time, I've learned much more quickly as a result. So
I'm hearing you say that there were two parts to this runway. There was the logistical part, which was the finances to be able to support yourself and create safety. And there was also the mental internal preparation part, where you were taking courses, you were getting certified, you were learning new skills, you were having conversations with people and trying out the skills and applying them throughout the process. So even though everybody else thought you just flipped a switch and you went off the deep end and you left because you knew that there was so much more available to you than the narrow path that was prescribed for you in that environment. It can feel so scary for people to think about that when they think of it as black and white and just a switch. You had such a gradual process that you prepared your nervous system, your mind, and your heart and your bank account for the leap.
Yeah. And back to that pull, I felt pulled towards it and not pushed into it. I think just to shift the conversation, yes to everything you said. I think the other piece is this economy, the way it's evolving, turmoil with politics, but also the fundamental contract with corporate professionals. A lot of the norms are shifting in a way. You can get laid off at any moment. A strategic direction can change and people are not prepared. A couple of weeks ago, someone who's been with my former company for 20 years got laid off suddenly and he was not prepared. I think that's going to happen. It's going to be just the norm. People are going to get laid off unexpectedly. People who thought they were safe, this is where AI is coming in. Like AI is able to do a lot of the basic stuff. So it's like redefining a lot of roles. That transition's happening. It's upending a lot of assumptions. As a result, some people may find themselves in situations they're not prepared for. And like finding another job is going to take time. You'll find yourself like looking at side hustles and entrepreneurship to start building some skills. In a way, it's like preparing yourself for some gap in employment that is likely to happen to everybody throughout their careers.
So in addition to preparing yourself to leap into entrepreneurship, the skills that you're teaching your clients can also apply to people who are unexpectedly laid off, to people who are still looking to be in a corporate environment, but they want to show up with more of an entrepreneurial mindset, and anyone in between.
Yeah. In my experience, I think everyone should learn sales skills. I think everyone should learn marketing skills. In this new economy that's emerging, those are fundamental things to be able to ride the roller coaster that started.
I think a lot of us think at first that marketing and sales are very icky, and they're very grabby, and they're transactional, and they're about how to get other people to give you money with the least amount of effort and providing the least amount of value. Yeah. And we have learned that marketing and sales can actually be a really enjoyable experience because you create a win-win between you and any other person you're interacting with. And that's such a great skill for especially highly sensitive corporate employees, because you get to feel authentic. You get to know that you're connecting, you're building value, and you're being the good person you want to be. You're also able to translate that into what a bottom line is, or why you would be so great for a position, or why you would be so fantastic as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. It gives you skills for a lot of situations. It makes you flexible and allows you to stay off autopilot, which I think is really important with this emerging world that we're experiencing. Autopilot's not going to be your friend.
Your job is to bring as much authenticity and creativity and new intellectual property as you can. So the final piece of this, there was your life in corporate America, armored, very calm, covering. There was the runway, productive, yes, very high achieving, great on the outside, not feeling good on the inside. There was the runway that you created over time. And now, what does it look like to be a highly sensitive entrepreneur coming from a corporate environment and helping other people build those skills too?
I'm having a blast. I'm feeling a lot more alive. Again, don't want to minimize the kind of uncertainty and the risk, but being a highly sensitive person really is a superpower to address what's happening. A lot of people will resist the unknown and keep doing what you're doing, or trying to numb yourself and try to grind through all the hard parts. There's a whole entrepreneur culture around grinding through, and the hustle culture, which is not a recipe to really be in touch with what people find valuable and creating something that's sustainable, not only for you, but for the world, the bigger mission of having impact on the world. I love that I'm able to listen to what my nervous system is saying, what my experience is telling me, and really tapping into that creativity. I am in a level of creativity that I hadn't experienced before, because corporate, it's like creativity belongs to someone else. Or you're subject to everyone else's decisions. Whereas now, as an entrepreneur, I get to really tap into my creativity and bring it into the world. The other piece I'm really, really enjoying is just I meet incredible people like yourself, and you're able to develop amazing relationships. Entrepreneurship can be really lonely if you let it be. I'm able to connect with people in a really genuine, authentic way, and I have so many rich relationships as a result of it. And collaborations and people who feed me and that I feed them energetically, and we get really creative with each other and we support each other. Whereas in contrast to corporate, it's very competitive and it's very secretive. You have to be careful who you confide with and the relationships you build. That's not true in all cases, but generally it feels like a zero-sum game, and you're trying to fight for your pie and expand your pie, and someone else has to lose from it. In entrepreneurship, at least in what we're doing, and in some aspects of entrepreneurship, that's not the case. You connect on a human level and create really fantastic things and learn. And the other piece is I get to learn so much, which I love. That's part of my HSP, is constantly learning, constantly experiencing life, and being able to do that a lot more on a day-to-day basis. That's what I love. It's been such an adventure and fun.
I'm so glad that we went through training together and that we built this friendship. I'm glad that you kept reaching out to me, because I was like, oh, Pierre's great. I want to talk to him more often. So I'm really glad you pursued this friendship, because I feel incredibly grateful and lucky for it now.
I was like, I need to connect with her outside of the classroom. I'm like, hey, do you want to be friends? As an adult, I was like, this is weird, but you do that more as an entrepreneur and like as an HSP. You've got to put the effort in and willing to ask, can you be friends? I think that is such an important thing as an adult, and it's a gift to find people who are open and willing to do that. But it's totally possible. People are open to it. They're hungry for it.
I just realized that you gave me my first experience with networking because you reached out to me and you offered a no strings attached conversation because you were interested in getting to know me. We clicked right away. We had so many things in common. And then this friendship built very naturally from that. I realized that's exactly how I approach all of my networking now. I go to meet people because I'm genuinely interested in them. I want to connect. And sometimes they turn into clients. Sometimes they just turn into friends or colleagues or really cool connections and people that I want to refer other people to. It really is possible to build a community of people to whom you are connected and do it in a really deep, meaningful, authentic way. It literally just clicked for me that the way that you modeled for me reaching out to me and becoming my friend is the way that I do it now too.
That prompts me to say sales, marketing, and networking. I think those are like the survival skills. Even in corporate or entrepreneurship or personal life, you can pull all aspects of that as an HSP to really enrich your life. I think the networking is the third leg of that three-legged stool. It's probably the foundational one for the other two. Showing up without attachment, without strings, and offering and being present. Yeah.
Which are all things that highly sensitive people do naturally.
Yeah.
The best part about finding friends who are also highly sensitive is that they do the same for you. So many of us are great listeners. We can hold such incredible space for other people. Other people are used to taking up so much space. They don't think to ask you anything because they expect you to jump in or interrupt or redirect it back to you. And I think a lot of us highly sensitive people don't do that. So we can often feel like we're not being heard or we're not being understood. Building these skills around networking and sales and marketing, you're exactly right. They teach you how to interact with lots of different people and to find your people so you feel heard and understood and seen.
Absolutely. What you said 10 times over.
I would still be delighted to be your friend, even if you were still in your corporate job. But I have loved seeing you over the last 7 months, becoming your sparkly, bubbly self and letting yourself be all of who you want to be and not having to compartmentalize yourself when you go to work and then be your real self in the outside world. I have loved seeing you bloom and blossom and flourish in this environment. And even when it's hard, you still bring so much joy to it. I'm excited that you help other people do this too, because you're exactly the person to do that.
That's my mission, to help corporate professionals reconnect to possibility, reconnect to their creativity, and reconnect to what pulls them forward. I know I keep saying that over and over, but I truly believe that we have to connect to things that pull us versus pushing ourselves towards something, some ideal that's not necessarily something we want, or we didn't make a choice to set that as a goal. Each client that I start working with, my mission is to reconnect you to all those things, to your possibility, to creativity, and to what drives you, what you choose to drive, what you choose to work towards and be pulled to versus what someone else is saying.
Your life can look exactly the way you intended it to look, and you can have checked all of those boxes and feel completely miserable. It's okay that you don't feel great, even though you have everything you think you're supposed to have. There are still opportunities for you to have all of those things and to be the person that you want to be. And having seen you coached and having received coaching from you, I know that you are fantastic at this. So I'm so excited for your clients to find you.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Do you have something that you would like to offer or a resource?
I run monthly trainings called Wake Up from the Corporate Hive Mind, where I tackle 3 beliefs that get in the way from thinking about what life would look like outside corporate, start their own thing. In the corporate mindset, we develop these habits of seeing the world, working in the world, that really get in the way of really seeing what else is possible. I do that through this training class, and I've recently changed it where I also offer 3 additional reframes to challenge you to look at it even more deeply, not just your beliefs, but how to take responsibility for creating the life that you want, the result that you want. I offer them for you to see what that would look like as an entrepreneur. These are 3 foundational beliefs as entrepreneurs to really take responsibility for creating what you want. I offer this training monthly, And there's one coming up in July. I charge for these, but I'm offering a reduced rate for your listeners if they're interested. It's cheaper than going to Shake Shack for two.
So people can come and learn from you, learn your techniques, and learn the concepts that you teach your clients for less than the price of going out to dinner at Shake Shack.
Yeah, 3 beliefs that are getting in their way and 3 reframes that reframes that entrepreneurs use to start creating what they want. I offer a coupon, and I'll share that with you when you sign up to get more information about the class. www.notreadytoleap, that's NOTREADYTOLEAP.com. That will redirect you to my site, to the page where you can sign up to get more information and about the class in July.
Excellent. If someone would like to hop on your newsletter list, in addition to coming to the workshop, or if they just want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Through that page, when you sign up for the information, you get onto my newsletter as well. But if you just want to learn more about me without any commitment, just go to www.pierrebradette.com.
I will put all of that in the show notes as well, so do not panic, my highly sensitive listener. It will all be available to you. You can just click on the link. What is one thing that you want our listeners to take away from this conversation?
The thing that's been coming to mind, the way forward is through. But the quote originally comes from Robert Frost. The best way out is always through. In yoga, is through embodiment. That's been a recurring theme for me for the past 5 years. The way out is through your body. Most people interpret best way out is to grind it through. This is where I think as HSPs, it's our superpower. The body and the nervous system are giving us signals, and we have the choice of either ignoring them or tuning into them. And for me, tuning into them is the way through. There's another quote in my research, just like Mae Brown: "We can selectively numb your emotions. When we numb the painful emotions, we also numb the positive emotions." For me, that is so true, because that was my experience for so many years. There's so many ways of just coming home to myself and befriending my new nervous system. I think the piece that goes along with this is becoming aware. Awareness is so critical, and being courageous to become aware. The body and mind are going to offer all kinds of resistance. It's not in our heads or thoughts, but it's what's happening in our bodies. The best way through, it's not to grind through. It's to become aware and become friends and engage and learn and really deepen that relationship with your body, deepen that relationship with your mind in order to get through. It's not a bypass at all.
I want to add on to that, because hearing things in different ways helps us process them differently. The Stoics are famous for saying the obstacle is the way. Whatever you're resistant to is probably the thing that you need to head towards. By figuring out how to overcome that obstacle, and not in the grinding, pushing kind of way, but how to be with the experience and accept and allow what is happening to happen so that you can move forward more clearly and more purposefully. That's how you do it. I love that. I love that takeaway and that piece of wisdom.
The grinding will show up. It's one of the steps through. It's recognizing when you're grinding, but everything you just said is part of the process. You have to get through it. Thank you so much. This has been so much fun. And I just love our conversations. We go in so many directions. We have so much exploration. It's such a delight. So.
Me too. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. All of these wonderful parts of you as a highly sensitive human are so fascinating to me, and I love being able to share them with my listeners.
What I love about what you're doing with HSP is so essential and so necessary. Culture up until now has not been very welcoming for HSPs. I think the awareness that you're bringing to it and the tools and the resources that you provide is a lifeline to people. I attract HSPs in my life, and some at various stages of it, and what you're doing is so crucial and so important, and it's poised for a lot of impact.
Thank you so much. I am so glad we're friends. Oh,
Me too. Me too.
We're just in a big mutual admiration society.
Totally. Awesome.
And with that, thank you, listeners, and I will see you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. If you're ready to take what you learned today to the next level, Head over to StephanieLinn, that's LINN.com, and book a consultation call to get started. I can't wait to see you there, my dear HSP.